Kiddushin Daf Mem Hey Amud Bet. Integrity is core to our national identity. Shearית Israel lo Ya'asу avla. Every nation has a past, every nation has a history. And some nations have a present as well. They're playing a part in the present situation. Not every nation. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Romans, they don't have a part in the present, but they have a history. But only one nation has a future that is as secure as its past is. Just as every nation knows it has a past, it knows its history, it doesn't know its future. We have a history, and we know that we have a future. The She'erit Yisrael, there will always be a group of people, even after, God forbid, terrible distraction, as we saw in the time of the Holocaust, and maybe again in a time of Gog and Magog, if that hasn't yet been, a large body of Jewish people will be lost, but there will always be a She'erit Yisrael, there'll always be a group of Yisrael that is left over. What makes us identified as a Jew is not just our capacity to be part of our past. That's genetics. Are you part of the history of the Jewish people? That your genes tell you whether you are or you're not. The big question is, and this is what's unique about our nation, what defines us as being Jewish, as part of Am Yisrael, is are you part of the future of the Jewish people? That's what you have to be able to answer. Am I a part of the future? How do you know that? How would I know? So if you've given me this existential challenge, now I've got to say to myself, am I living as I am today in Eretz Yisrael, in Tafshin Pei Daled? Am I part of the future of Am Yisrael? How would I know? So we've got a Rava who's going to walk out of the 5th century Bavel into our Beis HaMedrash, and he's going to teach us how I would know, how I can know whether I'm part of the future of Am Yisrael. Let's learn from Rava. So the posuk is in Tzfanya. She'erit Yisrael lo asu avla velo yedabru chaza velo yimatzeh befiyim lashon tarmit. The She'erit Yisrael doesn't do crookedness and doesn't talk deceitfully and doesn't mislead people in the way it talks. Ki hema yir'u v'ravtzu v'ein macharid. They will earn their livings and grow and be productive in peace without anybody terrifying them. So what does the Gemara say? Haud amar lekrivoi. We have a case. So Rava and Abai, Rava is sitting here with us, teaching us, and he says, you know what, let me share with you a case study that my chavrusa, Abaya, and I discussed back in Bavel. The case was, a man is saying, I want to marry my daughter, who's a ketana, off to my family. We've got some wonderful cousins who b'nei Torah, and I want my daughter to marry one of our cousins. V'hi amra lekriva, she says, you're misnagdim. We come from serious Hasidic background. I want her to marry into our family. I want our daughter to be part of our background. Kafte, they argue about it. Eventually they force him. The family gets around and they henpeck the poor husband till the point, okay, let her marry one of the Hasidic people from your family. They're also nice people. Okay, that's fine. Ad achli v'shati, so they make the chasana. And they're still at that, these magnificent pre-chuppah receptions that they have. I don't know why you need another reception afterwards, but you have a reception before the chuppah. So this is a reception before the chuppah. The bride disappears for a few moments. Ata krive be'igra v'kidsha. She arranged to meet secretly with the cousin from the misnagdish part of the family, her father's part of the family, and he gives her a ring and is mekadisha before the wedding even starts. And she comes downstairs again, she says, sorry, I'm actually taken already. Now the question is, the person who has the authority to give her away is the father. And we know the father wanted her to marry the misnagdish family, but he agreed to her marrying the Hasidic family. What now? Do we assume that he says, oh, wonderful, that's beautiful. Mina Shamayim, the Rebbeinu Shem showed me that I was right all along, our daughter should marry into my side of the family. Omar Abai, Ksif She'erit Yisrael Ya'asу avla v'lo yedabru chazov, says Abaya. No. He's already said, he agreed that she'll marry the wife's family. Once you've said something, a Jewish person doesn't change their mind. Rava amar chazok ein adam torech besuda mafsida. Says Rava, I agree that he's bound to marry the wife's family, that this little secret Kiddushin has no effect. I agree with that, la halacha, but for a different reason. The reason is that once a person is invested in a su'uda, once a person is paid for the wedding, he doesn't go and undo it and throw the money out and say, sorry, everybody go home, this is not the chasana. A person doesn't do that. When you've invested in something, you remain attached to what you've invested in. Maybe no, and the difference between Rov and Abai is a case where there hasn't been a Suda. Imagine the same scenario happened, but there hasn't yet been an investment in a wedding ceremony, in a wedding reception. In such a case, says Rova would say, she's married to the secret guy. And Abai would say, still, he gave his word, this is not going to make a difference. That's the piece of Gemara that we have on our daf. What's important is that Rova, what does Rova do with the posuk of She'erit Yisrael lo ya'asu avla v'yodebru chazav? That's the question in the sugya. So fine, okay, but at the end of the day, Abaya brought a posuk that a Jewish person doesn't change his mind. If he said something, then he stands by what he said. His word is golden. Surely that is so. So how does Rova understand the posuk? And I bring you the origin of Rova's din of Chazaka and Adam Terech B'Suda Mafsida is in Ksuvas Daf Yud and in another matter which we won't go into right now. So to understand how Rova learns the posuk, it's very amazing how Rova learns the posuk. We've got to go to Bava Metzia, Daf Mem Daled, where we have a Mishnah. The Mishnah at the beginning of Ezu Neshech says that if a person has paid money but hasn't yet done a kinyan, there's been an agreement to buy an object. I'm going to buy your car. Here's the money, but there's no kinyan yet. So I can still withdraw. Says the Mishnah. Aval amru, but the Chazal said, Mi shepara me'anshe dora mabulu midora aflaga, he who demanded payment, extracted payment from the deceitful people at the time of the flood and the Dor HaFlaga. In the time of the flood, people were bad one to the other. In the time of Dor HaFlaga, the Tower of Babel, they were bad to Hashem. In both of those cases, Hashem extracted payment from them. Hu atidli para mimi she'eino omed b'diburo. This is a curse on somebody who doesn't stand by his word. So halachically, yeah, you can get out of it. You didn't make a kinyan. You found a halachic dre that can get you out of it. But if you use the halachic dre, know that you're subject to a curse of a mishapara. Says Abaya, we've got the same Abaya and Rova. Says Abaya, Odoi modinale, we don't actually curse him. Rova says we do. Yes, we do, we curse him. Abaya says you can't curse him because it says, Elokim lo tekalel v'nasi b'amcha lo ta'or. You're not allowed to curse a judge even if he paskins against you. And a nasi, a prince, a leader in the city, even if he's decided against you, you can't curse them. And certainly you can't curse an ordinary person who's done nothing wrong to you. We can't go and curse people. We don't do that. Rava Omar, Rava says, Meilet leitinele. Yes, we do. We will give him the curse. Beis Din will curse him. How? Tichtiv be'amcha. It says, Elokim lo tekalel v'nasi be'amcha lo ta'or. You're not allowed to curse a person who is part of the Jewish people. Poseh ma'aseh amcha. If he lives the values of the Jewish people, you can't curse him. But if he doesn't live the values of the Jewish people, you can curse him. He's like anybody else. He's not part of the brotherhood of the Jewish people, or the kedusha of the Jewish people, that you can't curse. He's not protected by that, says Rava. Okay, Rava. Where do you get this from? That Maaseh Amcha doesn't include this person. Where do you get it from? Oh, Rava's disappeared. He was here in the Beis HaMedrash a few moments ago, and he's disappeared. But now we've got to understand Rava. Oh, in walks Rashi, sits down, and says, I'll explain to you. I'll explain. You don't trouble Rava to explain his words. It's not his job to explain his words. You either understand or you don't. If you don't understand, it's okay, says Rashi. My job is to explain it to you. I'm here to explain Rova to you. Says Rashi, Ba'amcho darshinan hachi. That's how we learn what Ba'amcho means. V'hai lav oseh ma'aseh amchahu. And this person who is backed out on his word in this deal is not living like a Jew of the future. Where do we see that? Dichtiv she'erit Yisrael lo ya'aseh avla v'lo yadabru kazav. And Rashi brings our posuk from Tzfanya. The residue of the Jewish people, the ultimate group of Jews who will survive into the future, they don't do deceitful things and they're not crooked in their dealings with people. They're straight. Yeah, but what's that got to do with Amcha? It so happens that literally yesterday in Shul, Moshe reminded me of a shiur I gave many, many years ago, based on an Orach Chaim in Parsa Shlach Lecha, where the posuk says, "Vatisa kol ha'ida vayitnu et kolam vayivku ha'am balayla hu." Story of the Meraglim, and the nation lifted up its voice and cried at that time, and the nation cried that entire night. Says the Orach Chaim, what's Eidah and Am? Vatisa kol ha'ida vayitnu et kolam. The Eidah, the congregation cried, and then it repeats, vayivku ha'am balayla hu. What's Eidah? What's Am? Says the Or HaChaim, this that it said that because they cried that night, we were destined to cry every Tisha B'Av, because that was a Tisha B'Av. He says, Hu ma'amar ha'katuv v'tisa kol ha'ida pirush she'hayta az. An Eidah, a community, are the people who exist in time. That's an Eidah. The community, the people who are sitting here in the community kollel of Ra'anana, we're part of this Eidah. We're part of the community of Ra'anana. We're part of the community of Eretz Yisrael. We're part of the community of the Jewish people at this particular period of time. We're part of the community. That initiated the crying la'am. And Am is the people of the future, not the people of the present and the past. And the fact that the Eidah cried that night resulted in the Am crying forever. That's what Am means. So you see, the She'erit Yisrael is Am, says Rashi. So when the Tzfanya says She'erit Yisrael lo ya'su avla v'lo yidabru kazav, he's talking about the future state of the Jewish people. The future state of the Jewish people, as the Or HaChaim explains, is what Am means. So if we go back to the posuk that Rava was teaching us, Elohim lo tekalel v'nasi be'amcha lo ta'or, says Rava, bo'oseh ma'aseh amcha. The people you can't curse are people who are part of the Jewish future, not people who are part of the Jewish past. If you're not part of the Jewish future, you're not part of Am Yisrael. You might be part of Bnei Yisrael, you might be part of Kahal Yisrael, you might be part of Adat Yisrael, but you're not part of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael is the nation that survives into the future, not that has survived the past. The Jewish people are future-oriented. I explained before Ne'ilah last night. What is Ne'ilah? What is this door that's closing? It's the door to the future. Do you want to be part of Am Yisrael and walk through that door into the future? Or do you want to sit on this door outside and have the door slam in your face and you're part of Bnei Yisrael, you're part of the past of Israel, you're part of the history. And that's why we're not big on cultural monuments. We're not big on celebrating the past. Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkot is not about the past. It's all about the future. It's all about principles that are eternal, that aren't in a specific period of time. That's what we celebrate. We don't put up monument. Where do you find a monument to something in the past? The past is history. We don't dwell in the past. We dwell in the future. The place of the Jewish mind, the place of the Jewish heart, the place of Jewish values is in the future of the Jewish people. That's why we're so big on education, on chinuch. That's about the future of the Jewish people. That's where we invest our efforts. Invest in the future of the Jewish people. Be part of the Jewish people's future. So what is Rava teaching us? What do you need to do in order to be part of the Jewish people's future? She'erit Yisrael lo ya'su avla v'lo yidabru chazav. Abaya learns that posuk to say, that's an instruction to us how to take a person's word. That's what this is, says Abaya. If a person says something, you assume he's telling the truth. It's an instruction to us to take their word for it. No, says Rava. Just take it literally. You remember Abaya and Rava. Abaya looks at the optimistic side of the world. Remember when Rav Yosef asks the two little children, where's Hashem? Abaya goes outside and points to the sky. Rava just points to the ceiling. Rava works within the structure. Abaya looks at the whole sunny world and he says, this is to show you know what a Jew is. If a Jew says something, assume he means it. If a Jew says something, take his word for it. If a Jew says something, don't assume he's changed his mind. This is a Jew. This is a She'erit Yisrael. Says Rava, no, just get back to a much more restricted view of it. Yes, this is She'erit Yisrael, but not everybody is part of She'erit Yisrael. It doesn't mean that this man who was having an argument with his wife about who his daughter should marry, you don't know that he's part of She'erit Yisrael. Maybe he's a liar and he isn't part of She'erit Yisrael and this posuk doesn't apply to him. We don't know this. This posuk doesn't apply to every Jewish person living today. This applies to the Jewish people who are going to survive into the future. And you're only part of the Jewish people to survive into the future if you're lo ya'su avla. Do you have integrity? It's interesting, we learned on Kol Nidre night in Shul, the idea that if you haven't got mechila from the Ben Adam lechaveru, if you haven't sorted out the integrity issues, Hashem doesn't even deal with the mechila. The Yom Kippur doesn't even start without the integrity issues being sorted out. And once again, we see how absolutely linked together the interpersonal is and the Ben Adam lemokum, how the integrity is foundational. Integrity doesn't determine whether you're a genetic Jew. The integrity doesn't determine whether you qualify for the law of return and you can get an Israeli citizenship. They don't ask you about integrity. They ask you about genetics. Where do you come from? Are you part of Are you part of the Jewish past? But when it comes to how you treat a fellow Jew, that's something that one has to look at the values. Are you living as a Jewish person? Are you part of She'erit Israel? Are you part of the Jewish future? That's determined not by your genetics, but by your values. Are you a person who lives by your word? Are you a person who lives with integrity? If you are, you're part of She'erit Israel. You're part of the future of the Jewish people. Even if maybe you're not keeping Shabbos, even if you're not keeping Kashrus, that's a problem. That means you're not part of the current Jewish community. But if you're a person of great integrity, you could be part of the future of the Jewish people. And that's where we have to focus. So that's the beautiful lesson, the Matmonim, that Rova teaches us in understanding this difficult posuk in Tzfanya through the case study in Kiddushin Daf Memhei of the young girl who gets married twice, one correctly and once incorrectly, and his understanding of the Misha Pora, of the curse of one who doesn't keep his word, in the beginning of Perek HaZahav in Bava Metzia.